Appreciate you joining us, Gaurav, giving us a breakdown on what works in favor or against smaller states formation. But with the formation of Telangana, that's clearly lit the fires across the country for demand of separate statehood, be it Vidarbha, be it Gorkhaland, be it splitting Uttar Pradesh into 4 parts, be it the choice of Mithilachal in Bihar, Coorg in Karnataka, or even Saurashtra in Gujarat. We're joined today on Newsnight by Nirmala Sitharaman, national spokesperson of the BJP. We also have Sanjay Jha, national spokesperson, Congress. We will soon be joined by Anil Desai, MP, Rajya Sabha, Shiv Sena. We also have at this juncture Dr. Srinivas Khandelwal, pro-Vidarbha activist, who joins us from Maharashtra at this point of time. I want to come directly to Sanjay Jha first at this point of time. Sanjay, it's rightly said, when a state is born out of political calculations, it is bound to leave a splitting headache.
Preeti, I don't know what you're trying to insinuate, but if you're referring to Telangana, I can tell you that that was a historical demand. It has gone through its own torturous political course. A lot of the contentiousness that you have seen, unfortunately some of it fairly unpleasant in Parliament, which could have been avoided perhaps. But end of day, you know, if you look at the larger aspect, it's about meeting popular aspirations, it's about meeting public expectations and ensuring a more equitable developmental model between what will be Simandra and Telangana. But don't forget that Simandra is getting a special status, and there will be enough. In fact, if you read the Prime Minister's speech yesterday, there is a very great emphasis to ensure that Simandra people will not at all be adversely affected by the split. But, you know, to answer your question on a larger perspective, I think, you know, I heard Gaurav's comment on different, demands for smaller states. But let me tell you, that is something in a great number of ways that needs to be now possibly put into a more formal structure of a state reorganization commission that existed earlier. We need to have
is your government open to a second state reorganization commission?
Well, I think that's something that definitely needs, I think all political parties will probably agree to it. Because even if you mentioned Vidarbha some time back, I live in Maharashtra, and I can tell you Vidarbha, where, you have had a lot of instances of, cotton farmers, committing suicides. But, the bottom line is Vidarbha is a very prosperous mineral belt. It is actually one of the more attractive, regions of Maharashtra.
Similarly, Sanjay, at this point of time, there are many saying that how much does this decision vary on that nearly half of the 42 parliamentary seats lie in Telangana? Because there have been demands which have been long-standing historic demands. Gorkhaland, for example, double the number of years than the Telangana demand.
Well, there is no doubt about it that end of day you also need a stronger political representation. I'll give an example. You mentioned Vidarbha. You found that the BJP is saying that they are in favor of it. Their partners in Maharashtra, Shiv Sena, has never in fact talked about Vidarbha being a separate state. So, I mean, these are issues that will require, the chosen representatives of the people to actually sit and discuss. But I think what is demanded here is greater political maturity. I completely agree with you. There should be no politics behind it. What's more important is administrative viability. It should result in better economic development. And I think equitable social and economic progress.
Stay on with us, Sanjay. Let's bring in Nirmala Sitharaman at this point of time. Ms. Sitharaman, the question is, the BJP has stood for the formation of smaller states. What do you will have to say to Shiv Sena, which has completely put its foot down on even the thought of separate Vidarbha?
First thing first, you're right in saying that we favor smaller states for better administration. And that certainly will be approached with a great consensus building approach and talking to everyone, taking everybody on board. It is not as if it can be done just before election for political considerations or at any cost. So I think on Telangana, we have been very clear since 97 that we are committed to it, and we stood by that word. I would think it is important that these are not issues which should be talked ideally before elections. These are issues on which every stakeholder should be involved. Information should be shared with everybody, consensus should be built, and then a call be taken.
So, what is the BJP stand on a separate state of Vidarbha, Ms. Sitharaman, at this point of time? Because it is a people's issue. Telangana has happened right before elections. Many people are saying it's a political move.
Absolutely. You may pointedly ask me the question. I thought I broadly told you that issues of separation, if you recall, before the Uttar Pradesh assembly elections, if my memory serves me right.
Yes, sir. Ms. Mayawati in the State Assembly said that Uttar Pradesh will be split into 4 parts.
That's right. And at that time, our leader, senior most leader, Manya Advani ji, had very clearly said, this is not an issue which we can consider straight away in the environment of elections. At that time, 2009, whatever, year 12, I think, of UP assembly elections. That is the measuring rod which I want to refer to. These are issues which we really ideally cannot be speaking about just in the context or just before the elections. These are issues on which engagement has to be steady and involving everybody. We cannot do it in a rush, although some demands are long pending.
In principle, Ms. Sitaraman, the BJP is for the cause of smaller states. I'd like to bring in at this point of time Mr. Anil Desai. I believe he's not with us at this point of time, but Dr. Srinivasan Khandewale, pro-Vidarbha activist, is with us. Mr. Khandewale, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman stating very clearly that, this needs a larger consensus. It needs to be built. She's not really saying whether or not the BJP supports the demand of a separate Vidarbha. What is your take, sir? Hasn't been it a fight which has been pretty much, as big, as substantial as Telangana?
May I submit that the question of formation of a state is beyond any political party individually. It concerns the whole people of a region. It is a matter of development of the people, and an area where a region where natural resources are bountiful, people are hard-working, industrialization was there. All these things have been destroyed under the rule of Maharashtra. We are one of the regions where the farmer suicides are the largest, and therefore irrigation is absent, industrialization is absent, unemployment is rising very high, and therefore how are people to survive is the main question. So the question is of people's development, regions development, and large number of committees and states reorganization commission have unequivocally said that Vidarbha can be a prosperous state if it is created as a separate state. The whole data relating to development of states in India is every year compiled, and it shows that small states are doing better development than large states. Maharashtra is the second largest geographical state in India, and therefore it becomes very difficult to pay attention to all the regions of the state. This is the main difficulty, and therefore the question of about 2.5 crore people. Yes.
All right, stay on with us. Ms. Sitharaman, I'd like to come back. I'd like to come back to you. What would you want? Because the Shiv Sena is your ally in Maharashtra. They have outrightly said that no matter what the BJP says, we are opposed to the formation of a separate state in Maharashtra. In principle, doesn't it completely come in conflict with what the BJP stands for on the issue of smaller states, ma'am?
The issue of smaller states, we've stated our position repeatedly, any number.
Go ahead, Ms. Sitharaman.
We've stated our position very clearly on this.
May I respond?
Small states we feel are better administered, and therefore there is no conflict of interest here. But as regards alliance partners, I'm not here to comment on their behalf, but we certainly believe smaller states are better administered. But we also think ideally consensus-based approach is important for creating such an environment, and certainly just before election may not be the ideal time to talk about it. That is where I stop. It is not as if I am taking a position now just because it is a discussion here on the television. I know as regards the resolution which is in the Maharashtra Assembly, which has been cleared for a very long time and so on. So there are nuances and facts which prevail on the Vidarbha issue. I am not forgetting those facts which prevail. But all the time using
so consensus sought on what ground, Ms. Sitharaman? Consensus sought on what ground? With an ally?
Public opinion, engaging with all the stakeholders. Ideally, such a serious historic decision for any state will have to happen with a great sense of harmony and taking everybody along.
Sanjay,
Ideally, these are, when particularly before election, that kind of a environment free of highly charged emotions is difficult to obtain, and therefore I'm playing it very clearly,
okay.
without taking a position saying I'm against it or I'm for it. I think it is important to discuss all these issues and not just before the election.
Sanjay, I'm sure the UPA did anticipate this domino effect with what is taking place at this point of time, because in Parliament it was very conveniently said that we leave it to the Supreme Court and the next government.
Preeti, actually it is not a domino effect, because to just take the example of Vidarbha, I mean, it has been a demand almost, if not completely, as old as Telangana. These are issues that have been discussed in the past. Now, whether Telangana issue got greater momentum, but end of day, if you look at it today, I think the demand for states is something that I personally do believe will be an issue for all political parties, and I agree with Nirmala Sitharaman here that you need to create a consensus going forward. Just take one example. If you look at a state like Uttar Pradesh, I mean, everybody knows Uttar Pradesh, if it was a country, would be like the 5th or the 6th largest country in the world. So you have these challenges. I mean, end of day, as an economy we have grown, as people we have grown. There is an issue of urbanization that is changing the dynamics of the rural and urban India. So all these will impact the way you need to resettle and reconfigure state boundaries. Now, therefore, going forward, one needs to have a very stable, structured, long-term way of looking at it, so that there's no bitterness, there's no politics being played. Eventually, it should deliver to the needs of the people. And the needs of the people will be simple: jobs, education, opportunities, enough growth and development, law and order and security. And I think that's a responsibility of governments to really fulfill. Therefore, I think going forward, if there is a structured, streamlined state reorganization commission that is set up, I'm sure all political parties will back it. And then we can hear the representation from various people. There are a number of stakeholders. We can hear their opinion. And I'm sure at that point...
Let me pose that question to Nirmala Sitharaman. Ms. Sitharaman, is your party in favor of a second state reorganization commission? One happened in the 50s. Are we open to that?
Well, at this stage, very clearly, I'm playing it in such a way that we are not going to talk of anything just before the elections with certain kind of an agenda in mind. I think these are very, very emotive issues, bifurcating or trifurcating a state, and any indication towards a decision that which ideally should be taken after the elections, I wouldn't want to rush into it. I'm sure it's a call which the party will take at an appropriate time, but I may not be able to.
But Ms. Sitharaman, that's the point. By not putting your policy right out there, aren't we going to encourage violence, chaos and a state of anarchy in certain other states? The case of Gorkhaland, for example, here.
No, you're talking about a statement of purpose when you're asking me a question about would you want this or would you want that in order.
No, it's a matter of policy, Ms. Sitharaman. It's a matter of political class has to come out with their policy on how they are going to deal with the demand of separate states. If we've shown intent on Telangana, then why not others? Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Exactly. I'm trying to answer your question my way. Allow me to do that, please. The point that I'm trying to tell you here is matters related to bifurcation or trifurcation or division of a state are of very serious emotional argument based concerns, for which I think political parties, after mulling over a lot of details into which earlier we would have given some commitments, we have to take a call on all of them so that we are one, consistent, two, see the depth of the issue and then comment in a manifesto. All that I'm trying to tell you is we are not trying to evade an answer. But
Ms. Sitharaman, if Telangana was a part of your manifesto, then how come there is no clear policy on the demand of other statehood?
I thought I started with a differentiating position as regards Telangana and other states. In that, yes, it was stated in our electoral commitments about Telangana, and therefore we kept our word by voting, even though it is just before the election. Let me remind you, almost 10 years it has been discussed in Andhra Pradesh, and the resolution from the government went to the assembly only recently. So certainly it is a matter on which we've taken a call consistent with our electoral promise. But as regards the other things, I am saying, given the fact that we are very close to an election, let a manifesto speak rather than me disclosing anything in a television debate.
Well, Sanjay, can this ambiguity continue? Because we are actually looking at a larger scale there. We are looking at demands coming in from across the country.
Yeah, I know. I will tend to disagree with Nirmala Sitharaman there. The issue of Telangana coming close to the election has got a lot to do with the fact that there has been hardly any parliament functioning, and I think that has been a process on which a number of bills that ought to have gone through haven't gone through, and I think Telangana was equally a victim of those political circumstances. But end of day, I don't think we need to be ambivalent about the issue. I think going forward, there are enough expressed desire from some groups to talk about formation of their states, but end of day it cannot be formed just because a group is making its protestations. You got to look at the logic behind it. There has to be the revenue considerations, there has to be the administrative convenience or viability. These are things that political leadership of all parties will have to look at in a very systematic fashion. Ultimately there are public demand and you can't ignore it either, but at the same time you can't buckle under any pressure. So I think it's going to be a function of how you handle it, and I do hope political leadership of all parties will rise to the occasion as and when it occurs.
Well, appreciate you joining us. Sanjay Jha, spokesperson Congress, Nirmala Sitharaman from the BJP, and Dr. Srinivas Khandewala, pro-Vidarbha activist. Appreciate you joining us. Well, till the time our political class comes up with a clear policy on how they're going to deal with the demand of other states for separate statehood, the country is bound to further see more chaos and a state of anarchy. We're going to keep getting you the very latest. To stay with us, news and updates continue on the other side.